Hi people, today we're working on Home Finance Lesson 7 and we're talking about maintenance. So talking about maintaining your home, fixing things when they need fixing, and the costs associated with those things. So the first thing we want to talk about here is preventative maintenance. Preventative being that you're doing something before it becomes a really big problem, like you're fixing something before it becomes a big problem. So it's a small repair that are done to keep maintenance problems from becoming larger and more expensive to fix. Why is it important? Budgeting? I think it's just kind of a reminder to talk about budgeting. When we make small fixes now rather than really big fixes later, it's a lot less expensive to do small things now to kind of prolong the life of your stuff. So we want to fix something or it before it becomes a bigger problem. Let's say we're talking about a leak somewhere. If it's a small leak right now, you're like, oh, whatever, I'll just throw a bucket under it, no big deal. Or you could try and fix it, like maybe replace that pipe or put something on the pipe to make it stop leaking. Well, that's great because usually a leak becomes a bigger leak in the future. And a bigger leak in the future could mean water all over your house or your home or whatever. So fix it before it becomes a bigger problem. They would be smaller costs now instead of huge cost all at once. Typically, when something goes wrong in your house, it's the worst timing. For example, it was the middle of winter and our hot water tank went, and it was right after winter break. Like I was off for 2 weeks over winter break when we could have gotten it fixed. But no, it had to break like right when we were going back to school, and it was just terrible timing to get it fixed. And it's really expensive to get a new hot water tank. It's not cheap, especially for the one we needed. Not cheap, huge cost. If there was a way that we could have maybe prolonged its life a little bit, like just done something small to fix it at that moment, we totally would have, but we couldn't with that. So sometimes we try to do small costs now instead of having a huge cost later. Another thing here is that when you do things to fix, the problems in your house, you're keeping your house nice. Like you're just repairing the things that happen. It's not that expensive, and it just makes your house nice. Nobody wants a house that's full of leaks and problems and things that don't work and holes in the floor. Like you don't want that. So it keeps your house nice. Like your house nice. When you have problems with your house, they can quickly blossom into really big problems, and then your house just isn't working the way it should be anymore. So it's not ideal, It often can help prolong the life of things in your house. Prolong the life of things in-house. Because you're kind of maintaining it, It's like your car. If you're getting regular oil changes and regular tune-ups and stuff, your car can last longer than if you didn't do any of that stuff. You're taking care of your car, you're taking care of your house, and you're addressing the problems as they come up, not leaving it for way later when it's a really big problem. All right, here's an example. A roof on Henry's house is about 5 years old. With good care, it should last between 15 to 30 years. Suppose that Henry does not do preventative maintenance. What expensive emergency repairs might he have to do later? So a roof is a really good example because a roof is quite expensive. Like it's not cheap. It's not like a couple $100 to just get it fixed or get it replaced. They're pretty expensive, especially the bigger your house is, the more roof you have, the more it costs. And if there's a problem with your roof, a whole ton of different issues can happen. So for example, if some of the shingles are cracked or they have a problem, there might be a leak into your roof and then a leak into your attic, and maybe you don't see it for a while, and then maybe mold grows, or pests like different animals or insects start to get into your house through those cracks, or Maybe it weakens the integrity of the wood in your house. Like, it's not a good idea. It's not great. Your roof protects you from a lot. So what we want to do here is what regular job should he do to protect his roof, and what kind of emergency repairs might he need to have. So one big one that certainly affected us like 6 months ago when there was a giant storm and all these tree branches got broken down because there's all this super heavy snow on it. You need to cut back tree branches so they don't rub against the roof, so they don't rub against the roof and don't fall on the roof. Typically, you don't want to have trees over top. Like, if there's a branch that goes over your roof, you want to get rid of that. Because if there's a really bad storm and the branch breaks, it falls on your roof. And if it's heavy enough, it could do real damage to your roof. And then you don't want it just rubbing against your roof, because something that's rubbing against something every day with every wind gust over time wears it down. So it's just not good for as long. So you want to cut back the branches, probably once a year kind of thing. You want to check and repair. A lot of these preventative things are just checking, like, hey, does it look good? Yeah, it looks good. Okay, great. I'll check again in another few months. And if there's repairs that have to happen, you make them. So check and repair any broken shingles. It's a lot easier to repair one shingle or one area rather than the whole house if maybe just one area has a problem. You got to clean your gutters. Gutters are not quite on, like, they're attached to your roof, right? But if it's full of stuff, then the water is not being drained away from your roof as it should be, and it can damage that side of the roof or that part of the roof that's kind of attached to it. One more, remove snow if there's lots. If it's just like a little bit of snow, like regular amounts, you're probably fine. Some roofs are a little bit more flat, and that snow can accumulate a little bit faster. Or this is kind of separate, but if your roof is pretty steep, sometimes that snow can fall on people. Like, that's, it's nothing to do with keeping your roof nice, but it is still a safety hazard. Suppose that Henry does not do any of these things. What expensive emergency repair might need to happen? Well, he might have to get his whole roof replaced. So the roof might need to be replaced. You know when you say a word too many times and now it doesn't sound like a word? That's roof. Like, what is a roof? I don't know. I've said it too many times now. It doesn't make sense to me. That's expensive. It's not cheap. And in general, you should always have a savings account with some money in there just in case something were to happen. Like, oh shoot, my car broke down. I need to get it fixed. I have a little bit of money saved away for it. You need to have a little bit of money, but I'd rather not have to spend it. You know what I mean? I'd rather not have to use that savings account to get my roof replaced out of nowhere. Now, the problem with the roof is that it protects the rest of your house from anything above. So if something were to happen to your roof, everything below your roof could get damaged as well. So anything under the roof might need fixing. And if the problem is water can be a really big problem in your house because, there's electrical stuff in your house, and water and electricity doesn't usually mix. And then two, if there's water and you don't notice it for a while, it could be, it could really weaken all the things that are in there, like your ceiling, the wood that's kind of in between the floors. It could get into the insulation. It could get all moldy. Typically, not a great thing to have a lot of just running around loose in your house is water. It's not great. So your ceiling, your floor, your insulation, all your junk. General leaks are not good. And then you might have to replace your gutters. They are attached to your roof, so they kind of go hand in hand. So there's a really expensive things, and unfortunately, the further the problem goes, the more expensive it's going to get, right? So if you maintain it, number one, it's going to last longer, and then number two, you're not going to come into these really, really huge problems. Well, hopefully. All right. Around your house, there's a little bit less if it's like a condo, because a lot of things are taken care of in a condo. Some of the things will still apply, but there's a bunch of jobs that you should be doing regularly to make sure that you are maintaining your home. And hopefully your parents are teaching you about some of this stuff, but some of our parents just do it and they don't really talk to us about it, or some maybe they're not so good at doing it. I don't know. My dad never really explained what he was doing to me. He just did it. So some stuff you should do around once a month. Some stuff you should do once a year, maybe once a season. And then some stuff you really only have to do like once a year, once a decade, like once every 10 years, because it's not something you're doing all the time. So monthly, you should replace, sometimes it's like every 3 months, but we'll throw it in this part. Replace your furnace, not the whole furnace, but the filter. Your furnace / your AC filter. So if you weren't aware, on your furnace there's a, it's kind of like this weird cardboard panel thing, and it just has a filter on it. All the air that you're breathing right now, went through that filter. The more clogged up the filter gets, the harder your furnace has to work. And if your furnace has to work hard, number one, you're using more energy than you need to, and number two, it's putting more strain on your furnace. Both of those things not ideal. Furnace filter is like $30 maybe, super cheap. Go buy a new one, fix it, replace it. You need to clean your washing machine. This is one that gets me, because I hate a dirty smelling washing machine. Sometimes they have like a cleaning cycle on them. Sometimes you can just put like baking soda and vinegar in there, clean it out. But again, it just helps keep the buildup out, and then it keeps helps your clothes stay cleaner. Here's one if you have more washrooms than you really use. Run the water or flush the toilets in bathrooms you don't use very often, or in areas you don't use often. So if you have maybe a bathroom in the basement that you don't really use that often, or like a little sink somewhere that you just, it just doesn't get used, you're supposed to run the water and flush the toilets every once in a while, and it helps keep the wax ring like pliable, so that way you don't get leaks in the future. Because sometimes if you haven't used a toilet in a really long time and then you use the toilet, there's this wax ring that makes sure that the toilet is connected to the ground, and if that wax ring gets dry, then it doesn't work as well as it should, and there could be a leak. So a simple solution is you just give it a flush every month or every couple weeks or whatever. Now here's the one where we're going to have some more stuff annually, and it's not perfectly once a year, maybe more like twice a year, because it might be kind of at the end of the season or at the beginning of the season you do something. One big one is clean your gutters. Really, you just gotta check them. Sometimes you might not have a lot of leaves around you, so it's not that big of a deal. Like, oh, okay, yeah, they're pretty clear, good to go. You need to check and replace your smoke detectors. Not the detector itself, but the batteries. Batteries. That's meant for your safety, but it could also help save your house. So if you know that there's a fire in your house, you can get out real quick, which is good. And two, you could call the 911 quicker, Really, that's for your safety, but it's something you should be doing. Here's one for your shower. Check and redo the caulking, shower caulking, the caulking in your shower. So in most showers, I would say, depending on kind of what kind of shower you have, but there's the tub and then there's the wall. And in between there, they usually put like a thin bead of, it's kind of like plastic. It's like this movable plastic stuff. It's called caulking or silicone or whatever you want to call it. And it just helps to keep your shower moisture tight so that moisture doesn't get in between those cracks. Sometimes that caulking kind of gets old or just kind of gets messed up, and mold can get in there. So a little bit of water can get in there, and then it just sits, and then mold grows. So about once a year, I mean, you're probably looking at it every day because you're showering every day or every other day or whatever you're looking at it. But once a year, you probably have to scrape the caulking out, throw some new caulking down, and move on with your time. Okay, another one. This one's about your furnace again. Get your furnace, AC, water heater as well. Water heater. Checked and cleaned. They check it just to make sure that everything is hunky-dory with it, just kind of like a tune-up, and then they clean it out just so that way it's working as efficiently as it can, so there's no problems. And they might say, ooh, you know what, your thing is on the last legs here. You might want to start thinking about buying a new one, so maybe you could start putting some money away for when it eventually dies. You know, good idea. If you have a fireplace, I'm just going to add this in here, you should also do that one. If you don't have a fireplace, no big deal. But if you do have a fireplace, you know, that could be a real problem too if there's something goes wrong there. And I have one more. Inspect exterior, so the outside of your house, for cracks. So I have stucco on my house. It's basically like concrete, like sprayed onto my house. But I look for things like cracks and places where there might be a hole, so that way I can plug it up and things can get into my house. Or if you have siding, you want to make sure that the siding's in good condition so that things don't get into your house, like water or bugs or whatever. All right, once a decade. So you're really only doing this if you gotta, and you might check it every year, but you're probably not having to do anything about it every year. This is something you might have to do. I've never heard of this being done myself, but maybe if you live in an area with really big trees everywhere, this might be more of an issue. So get sewer pipes cleared of tree roots. I guess so, you know, you use water and you put things in the toilets, hopefully only the right things in the toilets, and you flush, and then it all runs into the sewer systems. But if you have a lot of trees in the neighborhood, all those little roots try to get into every little crevice where they can, you know, get water and nutrients and stuff like that from the ground. So all these little roots crawl in, and sometimes they get into the sewer pipes. And if they get into the sewer pipes enough, they can clog up the sewer pipes. And then when you flush the toilet, that stuff doesn't go down anymore because there's nowhere else for it to go. So then it can kind of cause a backup in your house, which is kind of gross. So I've never seen this problem, but apparently it is a thing. You can ask your parents if they have experienced it. So it's to prevent backups. And the type of stuff that's backing up is stuff that I don't really want in my house anymore. That's supposed to be not in my house anymore. And then here's another one. Make sure the ground is sloped away from your house. So if you look at the side of your house, here's the wall, here's the ground. You want the ground to actually kind of go like this so that when water comes down, it comes down and it moves away from your house. You don't want it like this. My house is kind of like this right now, actually. Water comes down and then it piles up right up against my house. You don't want that because I don't really want water in my house.